We often hear that people are putting out ground shell that's in a powder or slightly sort of a particulate form. We often hear about micronized chitin, and then we have our stuff, okay? So what's the difference? Well, first of all, this one has chitin, this one is chitin, and this one is chitosan. So there's one immediate difference. The next thing is, if you look at shell, if you look at this sort of stuff under a microscope, just looking at the chitin component, the easiest way to sort of represent this would be to sort of like look at it as a sort of massive squiggle of all sorts of intertwined fibers and whatever else. And embedded in that matrix are a whole bunch of proteins that are either embedded or attached to that chitosan. And then in amongst all of that, again, you have a lot of mineral, which makes these shellfish shells hard. So when you put that on the ground or incorporate that into the ground, microbes now have to get into this and digest it. And the thing to remember is nature neither has a timeline or a profit motive. So it doesn't matter how long, as far as nature's concerned, how long it takes to digest this. It'll do it over time. And it's really the same thing with micronized chitin. All we've done with micronized chitin is we've removed the protein to an extent and mineral. But you still have this fibrous mass that you're putting in there. And even though visibly you can't really see the size of the particle, from a microbe, you're looking at probably half a city block compared to a microbe in a human, for example. So it's a huge structure that it can get involved with. The thing is that this is not that easy to, for the microbes to digest all at once. And so what we wind up seeing, if you were to sort of like graph out how this sort of stuff works, it's not to say that it doesn't work, but it just works so much differently than our materials. If you were to graph out, say, activity and time, with these two materials, you're going to wind up having a very, very slow and very, very gradual sort of activity in the soil. With our material, I can't spell. We have immediate bioavailability. That's the key. And why is that? Well, if you look at it on a graph, you get a much, much steeper rise, which is the immediate bioavailability, and because it's soluble, you get a much higher elevated activity. So why do we have this, or how does that work? Well, what we do, our technology, is we're able to take this material. So our material as it arrives to us is in this form. And what we're able to do is to molecularly disentangle that so that we no longer have this convoluted mass of fibers that are all stuck together that nobody can really deal with. And what we have are individual, clean, molecular strands that are soluble. And that's how you get this immediate bioavailability. And so this would be the chitosan. And we also couple that with, in a lot of our products, yucca. And the yucca is a surfactant. And so the yucca facilitates the entry of these chitosan molecules into the leaf surface and inside the tissues or in the soil interstices. And the yucca also has a high sugar content, which helps to feed some of these soil microbes. High carbon content is always good. And the sugar content in there is very soluble. So you've got a high solubility component, we've got a surface active penetrating component, and then we have our active ingredient in here that's elevating chitinases and giving us very high immediate bioavailability. Well, another advantage or difference, I guess, is that shell is widely available, and it could be ground by just about anybody and put out there. It's cheap, which is one of the reasons why a lot of people are using it or tending to use it. Micronized chitin goes through a little bit of processing, obviously, to remove the protein and mineral, but those processes are relatively inexpensive, and so this is going to be more expensive than this as a product, primarily because of the processing and the fact that you have to grind it, because chitin's kind of tough to grind on its own. When you get to us, there is a huge leap in technical knowledge, processing, formulating, etc., that goes into making our products. And our products isn't just chitosan. They feature chitosan as an active ingredient along with other proprietary inerts and other active ingredients. But we don't just sell chitosan in agriculture. We sell chitosan as a featured active ingredient. Our materials are supplied at 2%. And the main reason for that is chitosan as a polymer in solution will cause some element of viscosity. And viscosity is a measurement of resistance to flow. So we don't want to make a product that has so much chitosan in it that it won't flow or it won't mix. So there's a number of products that we've seen out there that claim these higher percentages, and there's just no way you're going to get above maybe 4%. You're going to be lucky. Mixing chitosan at 4%. I mean, you're going to need some powerful equipment and some heavy motors to do that. But then again, how do you pour that into a tank? How do you distribute that, et cetera, et cetera? So these people that are claiming these higher percentages are most likely using something like this that's suspended in solution, because this is not a soluble product, even though they claim that it might be. And quite often people inaccurately or accurately, depending on what their intention is, will confuse chitin with chitosan. They'll also state that chitosan is water soluble. Chitosan is not water soluble. You can put all the chitosan you want in water and it will not solubilize. So it's the same thing with shell. You can put all the shell you want in some water as a fine powder and you can make a slurry out of it. You can put it up to 50% probably, or whatever the higher percentages is. But you're not getting the immediate bioavailability that we have.